Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to Symphony 101, Luncheon with the Maestro. You're very welcome back. This is my sixth video, and today I'm going to continue a little bit from where I left off last time. Last time I talked a lot about the conductor. Who is the conductor? What does the conductor do? Technique of conducting, skill of conducting, art of conducting, relationship between conductor and orchestra. So yeah, a lot of that. And at the end, I took a very, very brief look, just showed you basically a piece that I want to talk about today, a case study. Going to talk about the beginning of the First Symphony by Johannes Brahms. The reason I chose this piece is because it's an excellent example of musical line and how you can get rid of that bar line. The bar line is the enemy of music. So how do we get rid of that bar line? How do we get rid of that impulse and make it fly? And also in this piece, you just not only do you have that amazing sense of line, you also have a very clear sense of the rhythm and pulse. Here it is, the beginning of Brahms' First Symphony. Serious piece. Yeah, so we'll talk about this. This is the line that I'm talking about. There's also a line here. There are two lines. One goes upwards, one goes downwards. And in the middle of it all, or at the bottom of it all, you have the very clear sense of rhythm. This is the timpani, polkan, and it's playing in a meter of 6/8, which we'll talk about in a second, time signature. And it's got eighth notes, bum, 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 and it continues. Actually, that this notation just means you continue that. Right? It continues the whole way across. So you've got a really, really clear sense of the rhythm going across the whole section. 9 bars, that's all I'm looking at. So to get into that, this is the moment where we have to get a little bit more into what you're looking at when you're looking at a score. What are you actually looking at? And that means, please stay with me, that means we do have to get into a tiny bit of music theory, notation. When you see a score, how does that translate into something? A note, a rhythm, an instrument, a tempo. What are you looking at? What is the conductor looking at? What are the players looking at? What information is there for us to work with to create music? The first thing up always, and something we obsess about in music, is the idea of time. Music exists obviously in time. It is synchronous. It's something that we create. We parse it out, we carve it up, and we talk about time. So the first thing I want to talk about is time signature. The signature bit, I'm not sure what that really means, but it does mean that at the beginning of a piece, there will be a symbol that tells you essentially what duration your bar is going to be. Okay? And you see it's numerical, and it translates into a graphic notation, which are symbols, really. So numerically, a 2 translates into what this is known as a half note. It's a hollow note, right? And a half note is equivalent to 2 quarter notes. Simple mathematics, okay? 4 represents a quarter note, which splits into 2 eighth notes. That's the durations. And 8 means an eighth note. You see the eighth note there has got one little flag on it, and it splits into 2 16th notes, which have 2 little flags on them, right? So that's what a 16th looks like. And then 16 is 16th note. It splits into 2 equal 32nd notes, which have got 3 flags. And back home, we'd call this a minim, a crotchet, a quaver, a semiquaver, a demi-semiquaver. Here it's very simply, we talk about half notes, quarter notes, eighth notes, 16th notes, which is mathematically much more simple. So that's all you see. Not much more to this, except I just want to point out what that looks like then in a time signature. So when you see a 2 and a 4, like written like this, it basically means you've got 2 quarter notes. 2 times 4 is a bar of duration of quarter note plus quarter note, right? Therefore, 4/4 is a bar of 4 quarter notes, 3/4, etc. It's pretty simple to work out. You've got lots of different kinds of time signature 5s, 5 quarter notes in a bar, 6 7s. There's eighth notes. You can also have that as a time signature. That means 1/8 note duration, 2/8 note duration in the bar. You can even have 16ths as time signatures. So therefore, the piece we're looking at is in 6/8. That's not a very good 8, but that's an 8. 6 times 8 is a bar of duration 6/8 notes, and that's exactly what you see at the beginning, right there. 6/8 notes. That's your bar. That's the bar line. That's your time signature. That tells us how many the duration of the bar. How many eighth notes are in a bar, and that is also connected to this idea of speed or tempo. Right? So what speed do you play it at? You know, just all very well saying there's 6/8 notes in a bar, but that could be any speed. So we have to figure that out. How fast, how slow is it? Some composers, especially 19th, 20th century, 21st century composers, set metronome markings. You'll see that. You see that little, I've written there, a quarter note. That's a very shorthand quarter note, I'm sorry. But that's basically, it's a quarter note equals 60, which means that it's 60 beats per minute to the quarter. It's a very simple way of doing it. This is what it looks like, right? You set your metronome, and off you go, right? That's at 98. So it's a very simple way of telling performers what speed you want your piece to be played at. Other composers just wrote very simply tempo or expression markings on top of their music, which is not so simple. Things like andante, at walking tempo, allegro, largo, adagio. They don't specifically mean a tempo. They are a range of potential speeds. So that's where we get into a little bit of not so simple. So what do you look for when you're deciding tempo? This guy wrote this, un poco sostenuto. That's what he wrote at the top of this piece. Right there. Un poco sostenuto. A little bit sustained. What does that mean? We don't know. You got to figure it out using other bits of information. I think the timpani part here would be a big bit of the information. Like, you don't want that hammering away too fast a tempo. At the bottom, very bottom bass part, there's a marking pesante, which means heavy. There are some 16th notes in here, so you don't want it traveling too fast. The piece is obviously serious, so it's probably going to be on the slow side. And once you get into traditions of pieces being performed, you'll find that there really isn't much variation. The conductors and orchestras will play them at pretty much the same tempos. There's not going to be a wildly dramatic variation. So that's the idea of tempo. There are two or three other things that we need to delve into before we look at the piece. And I know that I'm now 10 minutes into it, but you just need to know this a little bit. I'm sorry, so stick with it. If your eyes start to glaze over, by all means, grab yourself a glass of wine or something. But this is now the idea of clef. What note is that when you're looking at something, right? So the notation is, there are essentially 3 clefs that we're talking about. I'll try and do this as painlessly as possible. This is your treble clef. A treble clef looks like that. It came from, if you believe it or not, it was the letter G. If you squint really small, you can actually, I don't know, you can see that stylized G. Well, basically the line that goes through the middle of that G, which is the second line here, is the note G. So that's why it was called the G clef. Therefore, the note that I have there is the note C. The bass clef or F clef. This was a stylized F. You see the two dots? You can look at two lines coming out of there. That would be an F. The note that goes right through the middle of that is the note F, called the bass clef, but it's an F clef. And the note I've drawn above it is C. This is alto clef, which is the preserve of the viola section. Remember our violas sitting in the string section? Violas play using this clef, so they've got to be able to read this. This is a C clef because, not the note from this, but it actually was a stylized C. And the note that went right through the middle of the C was a C. So that's the alto clef. Tenor clef is actually another C clef. It's the same clef, it just got bumped up a line. This will be used by the cellos. You'll see it in this piece, also used by the trombones. And that note is C, and it's C. It's C. All of these notes are the same. They're all exactly the same. Same pitch, middle C. That's them. So that's what your clefs look like. That's how you know what note you're looking at, okay? Something I really don't want you to worry about right now, but this is... don't worry about it. Forget about it. Don't worry about it yet. This is the key signature. You're going to see this at the start of this piece, but you're going to see this at the start of any piece of music. You're going to have these little symbols, which we call accidentals. This one that looks like a B signifies a flat. So you lower the pitch, you lower the note by a half step. So you play a B and you see that note, so after that little flat sign, you drop to B flat. This is a sharp symbol, so you raise the note by a half step, lower by a half step, raise by a half step. And this is the other one that I want you to know. It's a natural. It's a kind of strange squiggly little symbol. Basically, it cancels out an accidental in the key signature. So if you see this note, for example, in your key signature, because these notes aren't random, these are all prescribed in a certain order. That is your first one's a B. So all the B's in this piece are played as B flat. All of the E's are played as E flat. All of the A's are played as A flats. Does that make sense? So instead of having to go through the entire piece and write, flats in front of all those notes, you put it into this at the beginning, the key signature. I'll tell you about keys later on. We'll go into that at some point, maybe. But here, there's all you need to know is that when you're looking at something, these are the notes you're looking at. And if you want to raise the A to an A natural or B to B natural, then you write in your natural sign and it cancels that out. Okay, so this is piece we're looking at, has 3 flats. It's in C minor, serious key. One last thing, and then I'm going to go to the music itself. You have to know this, and I'm sorry to do this to you. I'm about to introduce you to a world of pain for conductors, horn players, clarinets, transposing instruments. These exist in the orchestra. These are instruments, strange instruments. They don't play what you see. The note that comes out is not the note that you see. For me, this is the musical equivalent of, and then the devil said, let's put the alphabet into mathematics. Transposing instruments. Okay, so what do you see? Let's have a look at it. Clarinet in B flat. You remember our clarinet? I'm going to show you the clarinet again, just to give you a little visual, so your mind doesn't explode. This is your clarinet, right? Your licorice stick, or clarinet. Comes in B flat and in A generally. In this case, we're going to talk about the clarinet in B flat. In the score over here, the instruments are written in German, and instead of B flat, just a little nugget, just to confuse things even more. In German, B actually means B flat. H is actually B natural. So just so you know that, now you can baffle all your friends by writing H's instead of B's, and B's instead of B flats. So that's a clarinet in B flat. So here's what you see. That's what's written, and that's a treble clef, so that note is a D. All right? I've written it as a whole note. There's no stem on it. It's just written it. That's what you see. It's a D. The clarinet player will play that. They'll play a D on their instrument. What comes out, what you hear, is C. They play a D, but the pitch that actually comes out is the note C. Clarinet and B flat. So to go from C to B flat, it's dropping a whole step. All right? So you go from that to that, drop a whole step, and it sounds as C. And all the notes do that. So you, as a conductor, and you're looking at a score and you're trying to read it, you see the clarinet part, you automatically have to transpose it. They're not the worst. These guys are the worst. These are our horns. Do you remember our horns? Well, they didn't always look like this. This is our horn, remember? This guy? Squirrely guy. Right. Didn't always look like that. But before they had valves, they were just looked like a hunting horn. So you didn't have any valves, you just had the mouthpiece and a spiraling horn, and you played the harmonic series, and you couldn't play any other notes. So when composers were writing for that instrument, and they were moving keys around, what they had to do was they had these things called crooks. This is basically plumbing 101. You remove the crook for the horn in C, and you put in a crook for the horn in F, and now your horn is playing the harmonic series of F, so you can get those notes. So as he moved around keys, Mozart, Haydn, Beethoven especially, right? These guys would have been expecting their players to basically modify their instruments as they're going along, as they're playing. And you would have found horn in every conceivable, this is why I've done the scary face, every conceivable pitch. Horn in F, horn in G, horn in D, horn in B flat, horn in E flat, horn in B natural, horn in C, horn in A, horn in E, on, horn in D, A, whatever, you know? Maybe not F sharp. Maybe Haydn's got one, I think. But that's, so when you see a horn part, you just really have to start thinking about, well, what's the transposition and what's the actual note that's coming out? Why? Well, I told you a little bit of why the horns did it. And that tradition has stuck with us. Now most horns are stuck in the pitch F, so its transposition is F to C, which is down a fifth. That's where they are now. That's what you'll see in a modern score. Unless the composer writes score in C, which is very easy for all of us, because then everybody plays the same notes. But we still have to deal with transposing instruments because we're dealing with 18th and 19th century composers. And that's what you get here. This is the opening. So let's have a closer look at what we see. Bring that closer, right? So poco sostenido is telling us, this is the top, telling us the speed, tempo, more the expression of the piece. 6/8, that's our time signature, 6. And then the clefs, right? Treble clefs here, bass clef here. Down here you'll get the violas playing alto clef, and the cellos are actually playing in tenor clef. They're basically an octave beneath the first and the second violins, and then the bass is down here. The bass is actually a transposing instrument too, and you can't see that. Okay, there. So what you see there is a C. What you actually hear is an octave below that. So that's just adding to the confusion. So what do we have? Well, 2 flutes, 2 oboes, 2 clarinets in B flat, not B, remember? B flat, this is in German. 2 bassoons, a contrabassoon, that big guy, he's hammering away at this C that the timpani and the bass are at as well, right? These C's. Horns, here's our horns. All right, the first and second horn, there are 4 of them. First and second, they're usually in pairs, 1, 2, 3, 4, because of the whole transposition thing, generally. So the first and second are in C, phew, right? You can take a deep breath and sigh of relief, because those notes are in fact C, and they sound C. The third and fourth are an E, looks like an S. It's actually E flat. So the note you see at the top there, that third horn, you see that there are two notes together here, but that's the third and that's the fourth horn put together. So that's the third part and the fourth part. Third part looks like it's a G. In actual fact, that's going to sound pitch E flat, B flat, which actually you see up here in the flutes and the oboes and the clarinets and the bassoons. Trumpets are in C, so that's easy, nothing to worry about. They just play a C. Timpani, you've got two timps, big drums, right? The timpani drums. One is going to be pitched in C and one's going to be pitched in G. This is your C one, right? Because that's the bass clef, that one's C, and just hammering away. Here you've got your strings, first violins, second violins. They're actually playing pretty much the same thing, which is an octave apart but the same notes. Braccia is violas. They're playing an inner part, which is very related to what's going on up here. Cellos are playing the same part as the first and seconds, but an octave apart, and then the basses are doing, like I said, with the timpani and the contrabassoon. So that's what you're looking at. You see all that material, right? And when you're looking for line, firsts, seconds, cellos going upwards in this crazy line, lots of, these are slurs. They're kind of telling you that that's where the phrase is. That's how the composer wants you to think about the direction of this. And there's the bar line, and we're just trying to forget about the bar line completely. This is the line of the winds, and it's going downwards. This one's going upwards, this one's going downwards, and then in the middle you've got this timpani and lower parts banging out the eighth notes. It's very dramatic. This is what it sounds like. I hope you can see it and hear it. That's just the very opening. A few things you notice there. Obviously the timpani. You can see the guy. Bam, bam, bam. And then the line going upwards in the strings. Hopefully going downwards in the winds. And the conductor is, and I'll get to this next time. What's the conductor doing? He's actually beating in six every eighth note, which is a kind of unusual thing to do, but that's the un poco sostenuto. Okay, we all do it. So I'm going to stop here, and I'm going to revisit this next time, now that we've got transposing instruments and clefs and all that kind of stuff a little bit out of the way. If you find that you want to go further into this, or there are questions about this, I can get material up there. I can get you guys access to all kinds of music theory resources. I don't want to get too much into that though. Really what I want to talk about is the music and the decisions that we make as performers and as a conductor and as an orchestra. A lot of this stuff we take for granted, obviously. You don't need to know most of the details. But if you've got questions, please let me know. I'm happy to answer them. Comments, suggestions. I'm going to revisit this. I'm going to look at it from a conducting point of view, and I'll actually conduct the opening and show you what I'm looking for and what I'm trying to influence. And I'll talk a bit more about how the instruments will produce the sounds that you hear. So I'm going to stop here. Let me know if there's anything more that you would like me to do. Thank you so much for being part of this journey. I hope you stay well. Enjoy the rest of your week, and I'll see you next time. Thank you.